we're ready to go. We are. Thank you for tuning in. Lord willing, this thing is working. If not, we're going to sing. We're going to talk about what we're going to do for next week. We're going to talk about the people that are on our prayer list. Charles is away tonight. He's assisting his family in Douglas, I think. He said he was. And announcements. Riley Nelson, I think his surgery is completed, and he's now recruiting. I think he said the surgery went well, and continue to pray for him. And the announcement, the event upcoming for this congregation here, 26th, the ladies' Bible class in the morning, and the 23rd, that's a Saturday afternoon. If you like board games, like Uno, there will be a gathering here Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. to participate in that. And you're going to come, you're going to bring a snack lunch, and bring enough for you and for somebody else. I guess that's the way you need to do that. If you want to be a part of that, okay? And the other things here is on our prayer list is the same ones that are there. And if you notice from last week, Loretta Allen was added in the bowl. Continue to remember her in our prayers. And I don't know anything else that we need to talk about unless somebody here has something that we need to say. Yes. Oh, I saw a point to me sign. Okay, so I don't know of anything else that we need to talk about unless there's some other concerns. And if you're not listening, you're not hearing us and seeing us, it's being worked on. So you might want to go ahead and save your text. They're working on it right now back there. There's a bunch of technicians back there, people that know what they're doing. So Lord willing, it'll be up and going. In the meanwhile, we're going to sing, and then we're going to pray, and we're going to start our lesson on Daniel. I think somebody just said something. Okay. We will sing number 514. 514, Redeemed. Redeemed our love to proclaim, yeah, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, redeemed through his infinite mercy, his child and forever I am. Redeemed, redeemed, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, redeemed, redeemed, his child and forever I am. Redeemed and so happy in Jesus, no language my rapture can tell. I know that the light in his presence will be the continually dwell. Redeemed, redeemed, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed, redeemed, his child and forever I am. I know I shall see in his beauty the King in whose law I delight, who lovingly guideth my footsteps, and giveth me songs in the night. Redeemed, redeemed, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed, redeemed, his child and forever I am. Let us pray. Our Father God in heaven, we thank you again for continually sending down upon us your mercy and your grace. We ask you, God, that you pour out your love on us here, Highway 30. Ones that are on our prayer list, Robert Allen, Sister Loretta Allen, Sandra and Jerry Jameson, Ken and Dale Kemp, Kenny Warner Kirby, Marcus and the Nettles, the Oliver family, Larry Bridger Pack, the Parkers, Isabella Reeves and her family, Mike and Deborah Solomon, and our shut-in, dear God. And we ask you, God, that you continue to bless the Raleigh family, Raleigh Nelson, as he's recovering from surgery. Please give him a speedy recovery. We ask you, God, that you continue to bless the ones that will celebrate and have celebrated recent birthdays. Please continue to bless them, dear God, and give us all many more years in your service. We ask you, God, that you be the luster as he's playing tonight to share with us from the book of Daniel. Help us as we study those things and we see the faith and the courage and the strength of these young men that we're studying tonight. Thank you so much for all you do for us, dear God. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. The sing number 540. 540. And then Jeremy will word of prayer.
See right now, I'm going to change glasses. We're going to be in Daniel 5. Daniel chapter 5. Couple of things as we get started. One other reminder: be sure and chew quietly, so no one on the recording knows what you're doing. All this little giggling going on around here. And if you don't know what's going on, then it will get passed around to you. The next one is Taylor and John have a baby on the way. Do remember the diapers. We've got this week and next week. We'll make the announcement again on Sunday. But do get those in so that those can get delivered in time for that baby. Important things. And if you're looking for the brand, there happen to be 2 boxes in the box in the foyer that are the brand. They're going to be happy with anything if you remember what babies are like. We got 2 different sizes, and so they're, one box of infant and newborn, and 1 box of next size up, and that's enough for at least 2 years, right? Or 2 days, whichever comes first. The other one is of course, you remember in Daniel chapter 1, Daniel refused to eat the king's food. What is perhaps the most famous food that we think of that the Jewish people do not eat? Pork. And of course, one of the big questions that always comes up, it's amazing the things that we think of, well, why did and honestly, can God do something and not give us a reason for it? And we still have to do it. Absolutely. As parents, there are going to be times that as parents and grandparents, you do it, you tell them to do something because I told you so, and that's a good enough reason. We died laughing at one of our daughters that said she would never use that excuse, and the first time she used it, we like to fell on the floor. Thought sure she was going to lose her parents laughing at her. You do it because mom and daddy told you so. That's a good enough reason for anything. And sometimes we just need to do what we're told by God without arguing about, well, do you have a good reason? Now, the amazing side of that, other side of that, as a parent, did you ever tell your children to do something without a good reason? Just to see if you could get them in trouble. It'd be pretty easy to do if that was your inclination, but that's not why we do it. We have a reason. We may not communicate always the reason. And you think about it, and many of the laws that God created for his people had a good reason. He didn't bother to take the time to tell them what the reason was. When it comes to pork, anybody remember the most famous disease that comes from pork? Trichinosis. There's actually several diseases like that, and most of them passed on most readily by pork. And there was just a little medical article today. A man's preference for soft bacon gave him brain worms.
Oh yeah, pork tapeworms will also get into your brain.
Several different types of pork worms that are common in pork will get to your brain, your spinal column, will kill you. And this particular man has multiple worms in his brain, busy eating, and here's an impressive one. What they do is they eat the nerve cells. And they cause all kinds of nerve damage to the brain and convulsions, and not a pretty picture, is it? Now, all of that can be taken care of. The man's preference for soft bacon, he didn't like his bacon cooked. And there's the problem. Because almost all of those diseases in pork, if it is properly cooked to a high enough temperature, with your little thermometer, and make sure you do it right, then it is not dangerous. Just thought it kind of interesting that it's still ongoing, and apparently God did know what he was talking about. Without, if you're cooking over an open fire, or if you're cooking in an oven in your house, that's not always the safest way to cook that particular. What are the reasons for all the other things God told them not to eat? Don't know. Sometimes we learn some of those, and some of those we just don't know. My dad often said that he would make a very poor Jew because catfish are not on the menu. And you know what Southerners and their catfish are like? They're close friends. Real close. And, okay, why is catfish not on the menu? Okay, it's a scavenger, a bottom feeder. What does it lack? Scales. Fish that lack scales was one of the things that's specified in the law of Moses that they were to avoid, which of course immediately rules out other creatures swimming in the ocean that don't have scales, and a lot of them. Sometimes it's easier, as parents, you learn real quick, sometimes it's a whole lot easier to give them a broad command. Don't go there and play over by the edge of the cliff, without explaining to them all the things involved in that danger and all the other things that danger encompasses. You suppose God sometimes just, look, I'm not going to explain every detail to you. I'm going to tell you what's best for you. Like parents do. Is it really that amazing that our Heavenly Father gives rules like that actually have, once we find out about it, good reasons behind them? We just didn't know what they were. And if we, like we do sometimes as children, well, my mama, my daddy doesn't know best, and I'll do as I please. Get you in trouble sometimes, doesn't it? And then get you in trouble again when they find out that you've disobeyed them. So, kind of an interesting lesson there. Sure.
I was going to say, give them 40 days and they're worshiping a golden calf. And I figure he's probably just keeping it, he had a lot to say, so just keeping it short, you know, it's like, go into too much depth and you'll lose them.
I've heard, we've heard, my wife and I've heard a couple of comedians go on about, you realize the first thing that God creates man and woman and tells them don't do. Don't eat of that one tree. What's the first thing they make a beeline for? Honestly, does that sound like kids? And they sometimes suggest, you know, the Lord gave us children so that we'd learn what He had to put up with. Oh, wish He hadn't have done that, huh? On the other hand, you also learn pretty quickly how special those children are, even though they may sometimes misbehave and do things they're not supposed to do, how much you love them. Yeah.
That sounds just a tad backward. You know, they have, it seems like they just misbehave all. And you love them anyway.
You love them anyway.
You don't approve of what they're doing, but you're quick to forgive them because you love them. They look at you all cow-eyed or doe-eyed and, what's doing?
Now, you guys might as well be warned. Little boys are ornery. Little girls will flutter those little eyelids at their daddy and wrap him around their little finger and oh, daddy. Some of us speak from experience, don't we? We know what that's like. But in the end, you know, it's really incredible. And what Bagley was saying there, think of how many express statements in Scripture actually bear that out in God's relationship to us. What was it that God told Moses about the description of God? What kind of God? Oh, He's mean and angry and looks forward to spanking His children all the time. You remember what He told Moses?
Which time?
Which time? Pretty near every time, huh? He was patient and forgiving and all of those things.
But there's also that time when He told Moses, okay, let's just get rid of them. Start over with just you. You know, we can do this without him. And Moses becomes the parent to me in that situation, which tells us that God was willing to listen to Moses because God knew Moses was right.
Would care because He knew He cared. Exactly.
He knew God cared, and he knew that God, if God had wiped them all out, the people would have said, you couldn't take care of them, that's why you took them out there and killed them. I can't take care of my girls on the ticket.
There is a line a comedian used many years ago. Sometimes you have to remind your children, I brought you into this world, I can take you out and make another one just like you. And believe me, there are days that you really want to use that line. There will be days. and we understand, and yet, even when you feel like that and act like that and say that, you also approach it from the understanding, oh, I just wish they would learn how much I really love them. How does that reflect on God? How much He loves us? He was willing while we were yet sinners to send Christ to die for us. Just that incredible level of love and commitment to us, no matter how naughty we've been. Karen?
I've been talking to a friend, and he's been reading, and God's mean kind of into, he's still got that kind of cultural, Old Testament God mean, but it's like he just got the Kings, and it's like, read Kings.
Yes. By the way, that is one of the most famous arguments that you'll run into in the world. The God of the Old Testament is a different God. He's mean and dislikes people and likes to punish people and all. The God of the New Testament just loves, he's a senile old man that will let you do anything and still save you. You better read your New Testament a little more carefully than that.
I think, here I go again, I think the God in the New Testament has put so much on the line for us that maybe he's a bit stricter in the New Testament than he is.
You think he's actually stricter when we have better blessings and more?
That makes sense.
To me, it makes sense.
To the one to whom, what was it Jesus said? More is given, more is expected.
And we've been given so
A
much.
whole lot more.
Yeah.
Exactly. Kind of an interesting thought. And by the way, it really does tie into Daniel very much. What have God's people done to get themselves into this predicament?
Turned away from God.
Been hard-headed.
They just disobeyed him time after time after time, and I guarantee every single parent has used this line, that's the last time. Sometimes it's the last time for, and this is one that, you know, we try not to do. And it's hilarious. You go in the grocery store and mother is lecturing her child, that's the last time you do that. Don't you do that. And I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, and she gets to 572 and the child is still doing it. And we'll get up and do exactly the same. At some point, you have to quit talking. And no parent likes to reach that point. God doesn't like, but that's exactly why Daniel is where he's at. Because God got to the point where, hey, I've told you, and I've told you, and I've told you, and I've told you. It sounds like a lecture we got sometimes as kids growing up. And I'm not going to tell you anymore.
I have a question. Isn't that lying to your child?
What's that?
Isn't that lying to your child?
To tell you to do something and tell you again and tell you again?
No.
Not follow through the consequences.
Not follow through the consequences. That is exactly.
And are you not teaching them that they don't have to obey because you're not going to follow through on the consequences, and since you are their example of the authorities aren't going to follow through on the consequences, and guess who else isn't going to?
Exactly. And I had,
Figure that out real quick.
I imagine most of us, if you've talked with people much from the world, have heard that. I don't think God would really ever punish anyone.
Yeah. It's a terrifying thing that they fall into the hands of the Lord.
And yeah,
Especially big man.
I wouldn't want to fall in the hands of the Lord if he was not mad. And if he is mad, then oh boy. What makes him angry?
Disobeying.
Disobedience, sin. So that's really what has gotten God's people to where they are now and why they're in this predicament. And interestingly enough, and we're going to see this more in a couple more discussions that Daniel has with God later on. But here in Daniel 5, how do you suppose Daniel feels? He started out as a young man, at most a very young teenager. And he's now up in his late 40s, early 50s, the amount of time that's passed now. We simply know that because of what all this is going on. And so, just keep in mind, chapter 5 begins, if you remember reading chapter 7 and 8, the visions that Daniel saw. Chapter 7 comes in the first year of Belshazzar's reign. And now it's 7 years past the time of Daniel 8. His vision's 3 years later. So Daniel chapter 7 and 8 are literally nearly a decade in the past. Chapter 7 is, and chapter 8 is 7 years in the past. The time is about 539 BC. Round numbers. Daniel first comes to Babylon. Remember when? Around 600, 605. Between 600 and 605. So he's been there for years. He's now pretty much an adult man. Since the time of Nebuchadnezzar, has he continued to serve the king? Remember something we read last week in chapter 8? He struggles with the vision that he has 3 years into Belshazzar's reign, but then he gets back up to continue his work for the king. Now, does the king know that he's working for him?
Apparently not.
Apparently not. Apparently not. Watch how things play out as chapter 5 begins. Belshazzar, the king, held a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles. He was drinking wine in the presence of the 1,000. When Belshazzar tasted the wine, apparently, first thing he said, this is good stuff, but we need something good to drink it out of. And he gives orders to bring out the gold and silver vessels that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, and remember in Hebrew the term father, grandfather, all his ancestor, we would say in English. How close of an ancestor is it? 1 generation, 2 generation? Immaterial. You're just using the word, is my father my ancestor? Sure, he came before me. My grandfather, my great-great-grandfather. So simply using the word that's used here is not definitive. He's not saying, and by the way, the reason for this is some people will say, oh, Nebuchadnezzar wasn't Belshazzar's father. He wasn't literally in the English term, but in the Hebrew term that's used here, he's a direct ancestor, so he's grandfather, great-grandfather, that. But he's using the gold and silver vessels that Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem. Nebuchadnezzar didn't just go in and burn and destroy the temple. He looted it and took things with him. And now the king and his nobles, and notice who else is involved. Take a look at the end of verse 2. This will become very important in a few more verses. The king and his nobles and his wives and his concubines were drinking from it. So the king has his family there. His wives are there. Okay. You'll see why that's important. Verse 3. They brought the gold vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem. The king and his nobles, his wives, his concubines, drank from them. They drank the wine. They praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze and iron and wood and stone. Any of those sound like the real God? Do you remember his grandfather had the same problem? He worshipped gods that were little idols set up, and stone figures and gold figures and all these things. What had to happen to him to finally get him to realize that, oh, there's just one God, and I'm going to have to follow him? Years of eating grass. Anybody feel an urge to go out and mow the lawn? Not really. So you get what, okay. Verse 5, suddenly, as they're enjoying this feast, they're praising their gods of gold and silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone. Suddenly the fingers of a man's hand emerge and write on the wall, the lampstand, opposite lampstand, on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the back of the hand that did the writing. So you get the picture. Here's what he's seeing is a hand and that finger writing on the wall, and all he sees is the back of that hand.
Is there a body on that hand?
Doesn't say anything about a body.
No.
It's just a hand writing. And of course the king, says, well, that's neat. I've never seen anything like that before. But my gods that I worship are really able to take care of me. No. Kind of like his ancestor before him. He suddenly began to realize this is something that my little fake gods over here don't do. And now there's a problem. Verse 6 is interesting. The king's face grew pale. His thoughts alarmed him. And his hip joints went slack. And his knees began to knock together. You get the picture, don't you? It sounds like a cartoon character, doesn't it? This guy's about to fall all over the place. He's about to pass out. Kind of like a typewriter going back and forth on him, huh? Yeah, that's the picture that's being painted here.
And see, I would have gotten that way when the hand got there. Because I never envisioned a body on the hand. I was hoping you would say yes. But, I mean, really, a hand just appears out of nowhere.
And starts writing on the
finger starts writing on the wall, and you're not even able to really tell what it says. You need somebody to tell you. No, my knees would do more than fall.
I have a lot of sympathy for how he feels. I'm not sure I would have felt anything saying that under circumstances.
For someone who's so religious with his gods,
You think he turned?
he doesn't even think about
He just lost all interest in his gods, didn't he?
Yeah,
There's something really powerful here.
yeah, also the realization that, hey, my God's gonna do that.
And it's funny, watch how verse 7 begins. Here's this guy shaking all over the place. You suppose he calls for a chair and sits down a little heavily and kind of struggling. And the one thing he gets out, he calls aloud to bring in the conjurers, the Chaldeans, the diviners. I suspect that was a little more of what we would call a croak. Give me the wise men! Help! I suspect it sounded a little fun. It didn't sound very authoritative and kingly, given what's been said so far. I suppose as he gets a bit of time, has a sip of his wine or his water or something, he gets his voice back a little bit. It says, the king spoke and said to the wise men of Babylon, any man who can read this inscription, explain its meaning, its interpretation, to me shall be clothed in purple. Okay. I told you how they get the color purple in the Mediterranean world. Do you remember? It's a little tiny snail shell that after you grind it up and process it, well, after you grind up and process a few hundred of them, you get a couple of drops of this vivid purple color. How much do you suppose it costs? Expensive. Is it any wonder that they're only used by kings? And in fact, in many societies in the Roman world, that if you weren't a pretty high-ranking individual in the government, you were not entitled to wear purple. And if you wore purple without being entitled to wear it, somebody would probably help you undress real quick and put you in your place. By the way, remember somebody in the New Testament? Lydia was a seller of purple. This was not a poor lady. This is a wealthy lady that deals with wealthy clientele. How wealthy? How well-to-do? We're talking probably the top couple of percent in the whole Roman world. Isn't it interesting that she invites Paul and the others to come in to her house, and there she will care for them. And I imagine her servants would care for him. I doubt that she's going to be cooking dinner. A woman with that kind of stature in the community is probably not going to be doing a lot of stuff herself, because she's got way more important things to do. She runs the business side of things, dealing with elites in the Roman government. Kind of an interesting picture that you get there. A little bit more interesting than just reading casually the text and not understanding what you're reading there in the book of Acts. This was a very important woman. And yet what becomes the most important title that she will ever wear? Christian. The one that she actively seeks out to be a child of God. Some people, even really rich, really smart people, some people are really smarter than others, aren't they? Good reminder. Okay, so the king is offered to clothe this person.
Any other questions?
Okay?
It puts her statement that if they found her worthy in a whole different perspective.
Suppose that's a little bit of arm twisting there.
No, I think it's,
Well, polite arm twisting.
yeah,
Kind of like Paul would do with a fellow by the name of Philemon. Because he would use pretty similar words to Philemon, wouldn't he? If you really consider me your friend, you'll do what I tell you. Oh, come on. And then he reminds us, by the way, you do know that you owe me your life.
now that's hard.
That's arm twisting. I think Lydia was just a little more gentle in her arm twisting, a little more polite about it, but if you really consider my status to be worth anything, and me as a Christian to be worth anything, then please accept my hospitality. Kind of an interesting thought. Do we consider our hospitality extended to fellow Christians as being something that precious of a gift to share? Puts an interesting perspective on it, doesn't it? What we have to offer as hospitality, as encouragement, as fellowship to other Christians is really an extremely valuable, precious, high-standing gift. After all, think about it. If you got an invitation from the son or daughter of the king, would that be impressive? A personal invitation? I mean, whoa, okay. Isn't that what we're offering to people? Are we not children of the King? Exactly how the New Testament describes us. as Christians, as God's people. Okay. King speaks to the wise men of Babylon. Anyone who can read this inscription, explain its interpretation, should be clothed with purple and have a necklace of gold around his neck. Suppose it's cheap gold plate that the king's offering. We're talking pure gold, kind of heavy, kind of impressive, kind of expensive. Have a look when you get home. Nobody reads the newspaper anymore, I guess, or the financial page. But look online at what the current price of gold is. Real expensive.
It's just pavement.
Do I?
It's just pavement and,
Just pavement. Really? Why are you worried about taking pavement with you in your pockets to go to eternity? That's paving material. But not on this planet. So clothed in purple, have a necklace of gold, and have authority. And that's what all this is leading up to. This person is going to be given the riches and the trappings of someone in absolute ruler authority in the kingdom. Third ruler in the Babylonian Empire. The number 3 ruler. There's only 2 people that can have anything to say about anything he does. So that's quite an offer that's extended. And of course, all the king's wise men come in, and they can't even read the inscription. And they certainly can't make known its interpretation to the king. You've got to read it first before you can tell him what it means. And King Belshazzar was greatly alarmed. His face grew even paler. And the nobles were, I love this word, New American Standard says perplexed. It's one of those words that kind of means, ooh, what's going on here? And everybody's worried and concerned about it. By the way, understand something else too that is not really expressly spelled out here. You will see it at the end of the chapter, but there is an army camped around the city of Babylon. Now, Babylon's walls are literally dozens of miles around the city. They have everything they need. They have a river that flows through. There's room to plant crops. They have people. They have food. They have their army. The fact that somebody else has set up an army camp outside and said, we're threatening you, is not really that impressive. More about that later. Verse 10. Now, where's the queen? What we would call the queen. Where's the king's wives at this point? Back up a few verses.
They were at the banquet.
They're all in the banquet.
but they're in a separate room, aren't they?
No? It says they're all in the same banquet. They're all drinking from the same vessels. They're all in one place together. All the nobles are gathered together there.
But 10 said, now the queen, by reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's the queen that comes in?
Queen mother?
Well, and how long that was
The queen is unnamed. There's never a name attached to her. But since Belshazzar's wives and concubines are all already present, back there in verse 3, and this queen is free to walk right in without anybody saying anything.
Be the queen of the former king or something.
Okay.
The former king.
What we would call the queen mother, technically. The suspicion generally has always been that this may well be one of grandfather's wives, still alive. Would she have been revered, since everybody is trying to claim that they're related to the king, Nebuchadnezzar and all? Would she have been honored and revered as the queen mother that stretched back there, and these are her descendants and children and grandchildren that are sitting on the throne? Very much so. Would she have been free to enter without anyone calling her into the banquet hall? In the Babylonian Empire, absolutely. So, by the way, there's lots of good attestations in historical literature by historians and archaeologists about the Queen Mother, especially in the Near East, was always highly revered. And in the Babylonian Empire, I mean, she just, when she speaks, even the king is going to be quiet and listen. What follows, of course, suggests that this lady actually knows Daniel. One more suggestion. Is this Nebuchadnezzar's wife that's known Daniel all those years ago and has watched everything happening in the kingdom? She knows personally who Daniel is and details about him, even though the king does not. And Daniel's still working as a civil service government employee. Jeremy?
I do know that sources that they used, they always said Belshazzar was never on the list of Babylonian kings, but recently they found inscriptions that showed he was a co-regent, I think, with his father.
Yes.
So you've got other rulers, and it makes me wonder too about the third ruler would be his father, and then his co-regent, and then this.
His father is on vacation down at the seashore while an army is camped around Babylon, and Babylon's being threatened. And he, by the way, something that doesn't really show up in anything else, but his father will actually be put to death a few weeks before the end of this chapter. Word just hasn't gotten back to Babylon about his death. I mean, after all, it's kind of hard for the mail service to get past all those soldiers outside that are assaulting the city. So, queen enters the banquet hall. Because of the words of the king and his nobles, the queen spoke and said. So she's heard. She walks in on this. She hears what's being talked about. She says, "O king, live forever. Do not let your thoughts alarm you or your face be pale. There is a man in your kingdom." She knows him. "There is a man in your kingdom in whom is a spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, illumination, insight, wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him." Apparently, Nebuchadnezzar's conversion didn't really rub off on any of the rest of the family, did it? But she does know this man and what he has done. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, appointed him chief of the magicians, conjurers, Chaldeans, and diviners, because of an extraordinary spirit, knowledge and insight, interpretation of dreams, explanation of enigmas, and solving of difficult problems were found in this Daniel. Do you suppose there's some other things that Daniel did with the king and impressed him with Nebuchadnezzar, other than what's written in the book of Daniel?
Because it's whoever she is impressed with them. She knows about it. So,
And he's done a whole lot she said, not just once or twice, like the book is talking about. Kind of reminds you of John, ending the Gospel of John. So there are lots of other things that Jesus said and did. Miracles that he worked. We're not writing them all down. This is just enough for you to get the picture. John says that you might believe. You suppose Daniel wrote just enough that we might understand who God is really God and what he's done for his people? He didn't give all the details. We've already found that out in chapter 8. God tells him, says, hey, don't tell everything you saw. So,
Does anyone ever hear all the details? No one does.
nobody tells everything that's happened anyway, do they? But it is impressive. The list that she gives, the Queen Mother gives an impressive list and says, hey, there's a lot of things that this guy Daniel did. And he was in charge. And yet, grandson doesn't seem to know about this great man. He's forgotten all that he knew. The one who solved all these difficult problems, this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. And notice what the Queen Mother says. This is not a typical queen. This is someone that seems to have a much higher standing than just the typical wife of the current king. Let Daniel now be summoned, and he will declare the interpretation. So she's kind of, Grandma's giving orders here. Because she knows what's what. And Daniel was brought in before the king. Well, that's verse 13. We probably don't really have time to get much further than that. I guess we can start with verse 13 next week. You can always read ahead and see what's going on. But it does get interesting, doesn't it? When you realize the things that are actually being said here. By the way, read ahead a little bit. How impressed, little question for next week, how impressed is Daniel with this little king that's strutting around using the gold and silver vessels from the temple? There's going to be some things that he says that shows he's not overly impressed with this guy. And he's going to make it pretty well known. Don't you hate it when your parents kind of rebuke you about something you thought, man, I'm real cocky and I'm good and I know all this, and you're not quite as smart as you think you are. Sometimes we have to be taken down a notch. It didn't seem to help. But we'll pick up in verse 13 and see how it all ends next week. Always a good time to remember, and certainly, you always wonder, you read things like this, how would things have been different that night? If the king had repented. Had stood before God and said, look, I'm wrong. I've been doing wrong. I've mistreated you. I've mistreated your people. I've mistreated things that represented you. Honestly, it doesn't seem to ever occur to him that making a change would. Maybe that's why God doesn't go there. Does God know some hearts that knows they're just not going to repent? Remember that scary line from the Apostle Paul to the Thessalonican Christians? If we really want to believe a lie, God says, I'll help you. So that you can believe what is wrong can be condemned. If that's what you want, be careful where you place your heart, your goal, your desires. They need to be in the right place. And that's really all the Lord's invitation is about. Are we in the right place tonight? Let's stand and sing.
Oh, for faith that will not bring no credit by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath the just and wrong, but in the hour of grief and pain will lean upon his star, a faith that shines more bright and clear when tempest rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and when for they may come, we'll tasting here the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. You got it. Close the loop.
Lord, thank you for another wonderful opportunity to share your word and for instruction. Mr. Bagley here. Help us to keep in mind those who are ill in our congregation, but as we go out into the world,